Hey, it's Shabes, and welcome to another edition of AniTube Digest, where we go over the best and not so best anime YouTube videos to come out this week from the 31st of January to the 7th of February. New shirt. First of the videos I thought were decent. Well, this first one's a decent with an asterisk, of course. I actually didn't think it was, like, not good in the same way, because it has a lot of great information. BennettTheSage putting out that Harmageddon video, how a crappy movie and its insane producer changed anime forever. And it's like 2/3 of it are like it's I think it's the first time I can remember, and maybe his Bebop video was like this, but it's the first time I can remember where he actually divided the video into parts, like part 1, part 2, and part 3. And the first part and the third part are kind of about the context, and he does say in the video that like the context and the history of this movie is a lot more interesting than the movie itself. Fine point to make. And it's like, why dwell my frustration with this is like, why dwell on throwing at darts and then like taking it down a couple pegs? Like, I get like there aren't a lot of super fans of this movie. I think people either like it all right or don't like it at all, like, and that's fair. But it does have a significant historical influence, which is what Bennett talks about here. He doesn't talk about the Kanata dragon once. I just realized, actually. It's like, god damn it. Great. But beyond that, he mostly talks about the producer of the one of the kind of the founder, not founder, but like one of the former presidents of Kadokawa, which is a major deal, and talks about this guy's history in the context of making this movie and in the framework of the rest of his stuff. And it's a lot of information that I never heard about. I haven't looked into myself. Was out there. I don't think there's a ton of too new information per se, but it is really interesting, and I think it's the valuable stuff of this video. And the way he ends it with like realizing that it's like, yeah, it's not an amazing movie, but it is really important, and it influences in this way, I think is really smart and like really great information. It just gets really dug down a lot with his just like, has Rintaro, he's like, I have to ask, has Rintaro ever made a good movie? Yes. And it's good, because he doesn't like Metropolis. He also takes a big shot at Ishinomori, of all people, because he's like, oh, this Kikaider anime is one of the worst anime I've ever seen, or whatever. Completely writing off all of his other work, like a bunch of his other like super important influential things. Like he's a figure that should be treated with reverence, like regardless of like your personal thoughts on these works. He's a seminal figure, and Rintaro is also a seminal figure, despite if you maybe not liking some of them. Like, I don't know. It was annoying to me. The kind of the disrespect for these creators. In my view, I kind of took it as a bit disrespectful, with his framing of them, where it seemed like he was framing it as like, no wonder this movie turned out dumb or bad because Ishinomori's attached to it and Rintaro is attached to it, and Otomo is new and didn't start, hasn't, and he's downplaying all the talent that's behind this movie, And it's sort of to add to this narrative of this Kadokawa president doesn't know what he's doing or whatever. I don't subscribe to the narrative personally. I don't like that. I disagree with it, really, of just downplaying Ishinomori as a figure and Otomo. I think he does give enough respect for Otomo, I think, because he obviously seems to like Akira, I guess, so it's all right. But then, yeah, like the disrespect of Rintaro is just really annoying. So I kind of saw this coming, I had to plug my nose a bit with like getting through all of that stuff that I think is just not necessary to this video. He gives a justification where he's like, I have to address the movie itself. Like, no, you address the movie and maybe talk about it a little bit, but you don't have to give your opinion. You just don't. If it's like counteract conducive to the art, like, no, I don't think you do need to. Even if you liked the movie, would I oppose of you putting your opinion if you liked the movie? Not as much, because like, that's fine. I don't, it's like, I keep bringing back to this, and I wonder how like justified I am in thinking this, but like, if you like the material that you're talking about, is that like a bad approach? You know, or does it create of some sort of bias? I don't know. But I just think it's more advantageous if you like the thing that you're talking about than if you don't like it. Because if you don't like it, I think you're going to be coming out at it from a particular bias that is detrimental and perhaps misleading. And yes, the positive side could be misleading as well, sure. I don't know. It's like you're going to have a subjective opinion about these things either way. So what's going to cause more damage, right? Yeah, I didn't really agree with him saying like, let me take this movie down a couple pegs. And thankfully it's fairly brief compared to the rest of it. You know, he doesn't go plot point by plot point necessarily with this movie, as he does with his other reviews. Thankfully, I think, because, you know, and he does spend more of his time talking about the stuff around the movie, which is more interesting and valuable and additive. His opinion here is not very additive, in my opinion. In my opinion, his opinion's not, you know. But I think that's kind of what you would expect from me, I guess, at this point. Of course, he does. You know, if they don't like the thing, it's hard for me to come around on your video in that way. Because I always kind of get on my guard when these sorts of things happen. Yeah, that's pretty much it, though. I did enjoy the video pretty much, but like, it was rough to get through it at points because of the you know, the things that I've discussed. Anyway, yeah, I wanted to put that video first because, you know, kind of almost not good, but not really. But yeah, I don't know. But I do want to get to a request video that I was given by Kamimashita. It's from this guy MyrnaMountWeazel, and he only has like, I was his third subscriber. Like, Kami linked to this video, and I was like, 2 subs? You know, so wow. And I think this is for the r/anime video awards that they were doing. And he was like, can you please talk about this? This is incredible. Like, this is a really good video. He's like, I wish I made this. And this is Finding Your Way Back, exploring Mono no Aware within the K-On! Movie and Naoko Yamada. And I admit that I haven't, I've seen K-On!, but I didn't watch the movie. I don't know why. I just found it, I was assuming that it was kind of one of the auxiliary, is that a word? The word ancillary? I don't know. Movie I don't necessarily have to watch. But Myrna really puts it as like a foundational piece and something like really fundamental to the experience with K-On! Because I do remember with the kind of a big thing with K-On!, and especially towards the end, is the idea of them kind of moving on and graduating, and, you know, the passage of time, basically. And Mono no Aware, I'm not going to do as good of a job describing it in the term, really. I might misinterpret it, actually. But from what I can gather from this video, it's about the very fleeting moments in childhood that you don't have the time for as much as an adult. Like, I love the quote that he pulls from Yamada, where she's like, oh, it's that feeling of like watching clouds go by and they're doing different shapes, except I don't have time for that anymore, you know. And it's like, it's super relatable and interesting. And it's like all of her works are exploring that, and there's a really interesting parallel that he draws here with Yui departing from Azusa in the high school, the same way that Naoko Yamada would depart from Kyoto Animation in 2020. Although, you know, I have my own take about that, and I've voiced it when this broke at the time of Heike Monogatari coming out, which was kind of a salty. Some people were not too, a little sensitive about this, because this is such a cherished partnership. This such a it would be like Hayao Miyazaki leaving Studio Ghibli. It's kind of the equivalent of that, really. It's this huge, like, how could you kind of thing. I get it. I understand it from her perspective, where it's not the same studio anymore after the arson, after the not accident. It's not even a fucking accident. It was a fucking attack. Ugh. After the thing that happened, the awful tragedy. Of course, I can understand her not wanting to be around that, you know, and it's trying to, you know, I can understand. But like, maybe there's other reasons and stuff. But at the same time, this is just the one was there any statement anywhere that Naoki Yamada is never coming back to Kyoto Animation? Was that ever a thing? Is this a permanent that she'll never work with them again? Do we know that? It literally only just happened, and she's made exactly one anime without Kyoto Animation, and it was great, by the way. It was fucking fire. Just saying. But like, maybe just a few years go by and she comes back. Like, that could happen, and it wouldn't be the same as her because I don't even know the character designer for a lot of her works. There was like the particular character designer and things. I don't know if those sorts of works are going to come back in some capacity. Like, I'm happy the studio still exists and it's still making anime. That's phenomenal. Thank God. I'm very happy about that. Yeah, I don't know. So it was like, I actually do really like the parallel that Myrna draws here. Although the thing was in my mind was like, I mean, she could still come back. Like Yui and the party from high school is like, yeah, there's no real way she can go back because she's graduating, right? And it's not the same thing unless she's like a teacher or something. But like, it's not quite the same thing here because it's like Yamada is still a working director and could still go back, I imagine. I don't know if that will be the case. We'll see. Maybe she worked on Science Hara once, and they're like, "Well, that was fun. You know what? I actually want to go back to KyoAni." Or she stays with Science Hara, or she does something else. I don't know. It's just nice that she's not retiring, right? It's like this. She's still making anime. That's incredible. That's great, and it must be really difficult, right? Especially the work that she just finished, Heike Monogatari. Like, fuck. Anyway, but yeah, I was really impressed with this video. I think the voiceover is really great and the technical aspects for a first video. It's seemingly a first video. The writing in particular is fantastic, and matching it with the visuals that you're talking about was very well done. I thought it kept my attention the whole time, despite me not. This isn't like something that I was like super like. I'm not a big KyoAni stan or anything like that. But like, this really kept my attention the whole time, and it's really well sourced with like footage of Yamada and some interviews and quotes and things like that. And you can tell, I think Kami mentioned that this person does a lot of blog writing, and so they've written a lot before they made this video, and like, you can tell like they're really good at this. I think the flow and the choice of wording, sourcing a lot of examples from the movie itself and explaining it in that way. I think that's this section where they're kind of explaining it beat by beat almost, in a kind of an analysis type way, as you do. Analysis type way. What the fuck does that mean? I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't enjoy the beat by beat kind of like talking about it in that way. Kind of encompassing all of Yamada's other works as well. It's just a very well crafted video, and I'm hoping that they enjoyed making it, so that they might make another one. Because that's the hopefully they enjoyed their time making it and maybe reach an audience. So I'm not saying like go on the YouTube grind. I am not saying that. Don't do it. It's a mistake. Don't. It's okay. I just like when people make really good stuff. And I like enjoy, sharing it with other people. And so I would like to, if they make another video, maybe I'll check it out and I'll share the other one. No guarantees, of course, as it be. I don't like featuring the same creator every single week or every upload they do or anything, if I can help it. But no, I just hope they enjoyed making these videos and that they consider making more. If not, I'd have to see if they link their blog, perhaps, or maybe I'm making up Kami told me that they have a blog. But yeah, they don't even have like a channel banner or anything. They kind of just, they got nothing. So I wonder if this has a blog, maybe in the description. No. Okay. Well, I would love to do more of the writing at least. I follow some blogs, not as much as I follow YouTube channels, because again, YouTube is a little easier to do that with. But anyway, yeah, I hope you enjoyed making that video, and great video. Everyone, I mean, how, like, the fact that they got like 200-ish views on this video so far, and of course because it's only for this like contest, I believe, or it seems that way, and they have 3 subscribers. We can get them to like 50, or 100, I think. So definitely check this video out, and if you like it, please subscribe. And I don't know, if it, if they if they're interested. But like it's a on them, and I think it's cool to give creators a space to create or whatever. No pressure. But I hope they enjoyed it, so they could make another one. That'd be awesome. This was a really good video. Thanks for recommending it, Kami. That was awesome. Okay, now for the videos I did think were decent. They're pretty good. They're pretty good. And this first one is from OtakuDaiKun. I have not talked about their channel since, because I don't really I'm not a fan of their delivery. It's a little too curt and like intense, I think. And visuals, it's kind of very serviceable, again, is what it is. But I was really interested in their take on this idea of like it's all fun and games until someone gets off, because I was assuming that they were going to talk about Sailor Uniform. I forget the name of the actual show, like the show coming out this season. They also do they also talk about My Dress Up Darling, but they do talk about Sailor Uniform or something. And right off the bat, I don't know when this I don't really follow their channel that closely, but this video, usually it's like Daikun is usually kind of presented as a guy with a guy voice and stuff, and he's still present. It's just multiple characters. There's multiple characters here, and I'm sure there's an explanation video somewhere. I'm not gonna go digging for it really, but at some point, Daikun introduced another character that dresses similarly but is a girl version of them. And I'm not trying, I'm stepping on eggshells almost because I don't really know what the situation is. But I do think it's the same person because and it's just being voiced by somebody else, because it's the same kind of delivery and use of words, and it felt very similar, but it's a girl, so I don't, but like there's but then the next video after this, it's Daikun like as I remember him from his previous videos. So I don't know what exactly the situation is. I just thought that was interesting and kind of surprising, but it is kind of the similar character, similar writing style and everything like that. But yeah, no, I actually enjoyed this video. I still have my like reservations, and I wouldn't watch all of their videos like kind of consistently that much. They are very and I've talked about that in the last time I've talked about their video, with like censorship and getting as close to the authentic Japanese experience as possible, and this idea of like he took like an eroge game and showed off that like, oh, they changed this for the localization, like they took away her skirt and now she has like a longer sailor uniform. And just that change, it's clearly that they're trying to like censor it, and he kind of gets up in arms about that, but sort of using both of these two shows right now to kind of talk about how people can see, people can like enjoy these shows for what they're doing, but like, and I don't know, it's sort of like I was seeing this complaint when Sailor Uniform was coming out, the first episode, where a lot of Sakuga guys, animation fans, they were having real difficulty with this show, because on one hand it's gorgeously animated and like wonderful in terms of the animation, but then it's sort of fetishistic. That's at least their perspective of it. I've not seen this show. I've seen clips of it, but they see it as very fetishistic, a little creepy, ogling the character in a way, and they felt very uncomfortable. So and Daikun's not necessarily calling these people out or anything, but I think he does note it, that it's like there's some people that weren't like a fan of it or whatever. But he's talking, this is like wholesome and fun, and like I like seeing defense of these kinds of shows, and people don't have as much of a problem with Dress Up Darling, it seems, but they talk about this as well with Dress Up Darling, where like very kind of sexy and enjoying the show for certain perspectives and reasons. And like, yeah, I saw one of my other mutuals. I won't dox them for but like I did see one of them complaining, I think it was about Dress Up Darling, that was like, man, if only this show was the characters were in college and they weren't like 14 or 15, and I didn't have to feel awkward about like they're underage and things like that. Yeah, that's fair. But like that's the thing. It's I think if everyone can have their own perspectives, and as long as they're, I think Daikun is pretty much saying this too, is like as long as you're not trying to enforce that on other people and other people's enjoyment of this thing, where you're calling for censorship or covering things up and like, you know, enforcing your perspective and your opinion onto other people that might not see it that way, or like, you know, like they don't mind these certain aspects, or they might enjoy it for those aspects for whatever reason, and we should be more punishing the actions that people take that are wrong and things like that. It's kind of a dicey conversation, and I do appreciate Daikun like really leaping in on these sorts of things, being very staunch defender of this sort of stuff. Again, I actually, you know, I'm somebody who's like, you know, even a show that I have no idea about, I've never seen before, I do like seeing defenses of them and sort of like championing them in some way, because it's, I mean, I think that's fine. I personally enjoy that that perspective. I'm sort of a fence sitter in that way, where like, you know, I don't want to. I think because it's at the end of the day, all of this is art that like people put a lot of work and time and effort into, and it's something that I think if people, it's also especially if people enjoy it, right? If it's resonating with some people and they're having fun, it's like, you know, trying to justify that and sort of defend it, I think is cool. So, you know, just kind of talking about that. And obviously Daikun is a lot more articulate and precise about these arguments, and really kind of like waving the banner. It felt like waving a flag the whole time, you know, of a kind of like really, not that like super enthusiastic, but like really kind of staunch, I guess is the word for it. But yeah, I was interested. I enjoyed that video. Yeah. as controversial as I think it could be, potentially. BobSamurai's back. Had a stint with COVID, unfortunately. So it had a bit of a hiatus of sorts. But back with a Glass Mask 2005. I was surprised towards the end that, because I was thinking about how there's the 83, 84 TV series as well. And he's like, while I was out, I did watch all of them. And he's like, yeah, I pretty much think 2005 is the only one you need to watch, because it's the only one that's like a complete adaptation and not as dated, I guess, in places. Although, you know, I am still curious about the 80s version because of what Marion B was talking about, and maybe it's more of the time, because, you know, this is a pretty old story, and it's just being adapted kind of recently, at least recently, 2005. You know, all things considered, compared to the 80s, where it's a little more relevant. But yeah. Good review of it, and just kind of what I was expecting of his. I just wanted to talk really briefly about it, just to be like, hey, he's back. It's good to see him back making videos, and looking forward to the next series of stuff that he tackles. And I did appreciate at least that he did watch the other stuff, like the OVAs and the TV series for this, just to really give that perspective of like, yeah, I think out of these, I think 2005 is the closest to consistent enjoyment and things like that. And it was really well articulated too. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Kind of neat how anime brought 1.4 million people to Japan. I will say right off the bat, before I forget this, it was weird that like there's absolutely no mention of what's currently going on, where people can't get into Japan, even specifically like people who are there for like specific things like being students and not even tourism, where he's talking mainly about anime tourism actually. And it was just sort of weird that he doesn't really give any. Maybe he doesn't want to date the video. Maybe that's fine. But yeah, he doesn't talk at all about about the fact that like you can't really. That doesn't happen, or maybe that is happening now somehow. But like to my knowledge, that Japan's closed off its borders right now. Anyway, it does seem like he is really making the anime tourism aspect and seeing like anime locations in real life. Like I've mentioned a couple of videos like that from his channel, but it really seems like he's starting to corner that as his whole channel, basically, as like the whole thing. And you know, he can probably cover other things, but you know, I think it's good, because that is a good niche. I don't know anyone that's covering this sort of thing, And he's really passionate about it, and he's looked a lot into these sorts of things and has done a lot of research. I think he does have a better handle on these sorts of things than like some of his. Sometimes some of the other videos I've seen have been a little less. I don't know. It's like doesn't seem as well realized or researched or like coming from a place of authority almost. Because like he's like, yeah, I've done this. I've looked into these locations. I've gone there myself. I've participated in this sort of activity, and he's showing the stats of it. It's a growing industry. It's something really cool. And you know, I really felt the energy in that. I thought it was really great. Giving you the history too. He was talking about this OVA that you know, there's an actual real life location that says this is the start of anime tourism, where there was this big trend of people recreating a scene from the climax of this OVA. I'd never heard of this OVA before, and I thought it was really interesting. I really like that perspective, and talking about other aspects too, and kind of giving the kind of the history, I guess. The 1.4 million comes from like a percentage of people reported to going to Japan for tourism for this reason, to see for anime or for anime locations, and then the amount of he basically calculated the 1.4 million with using that percentage with how many people travel to Japan. In a particular time. So it was like, yeah, it was a lot of people. It's not as much of a niche thing or a weird thing as he's trying to argue here. It's actually a growing industry or something really cool. The whole thing with Eurocamp and like this, there's a whole program now dedicated to this sort of thing. And like their keystone speaker was Eurocamp's creative team and things like that. It's like, wow. A lot of really interesting points and information, and he presents it really enthusiastically and passionately. It did really feel like he was starting to make this his niche, and I think that's great. I think that's really, really, really smart. I'm looking forward to, you know, I think once it opens up again, hopefully, he'll be able to do even more things and maybe look up other anime and other locations, because there's a lot, because as he said, there's a whole community here. So him kind of like how this reminds me of Fit MC, kind of being the main not Pied Piper, the spokesperson, or kind of the real, like a bigger figure that kind of gets off onto a that grows big from a particular subset. So for him, it's 2B2T, this the oldest anarchy server in Minecraft. So you know, that was this claim to fame of sorts, and he's been making videos just about this server, as he's one of the oldest still active users, and that sort of thing, and that sort of, you know, so I think kind of neat being, you know, starting to be more involved in that community and started being more of a spokesperson for it. I think is really interesting and exciting. Yeah, I enjoyed the video. It was a good time. Hiding in private, we're in it. Let's go. I don't know if I'm going to cover every Persona video that he does. That's okay. It should be okay. I hope you think it's okay. But like, I was especially hooked with this one the whole way through. I've not played any Persona games, or seen the anime adaptation or anything. But this is like the first of his insanely big, long-running, multi-video over series, the video, you know, like the big definitive kind of Persona 4 video. And this first one is talking about the use of color. And I like that he kind of caveats a lot at the beginning, because I think there's that meme that Jeff kind of perpetuated of like the red means dead type of thing. And so people kind of got tired of that, I guess. So he's sort of trying to reel it back, like, look, there's actual value in talking about the color here and talking about theory, like red means this, blue means this, and yellow means this sort of thing. Citing interviews with the chief character designer, I believe the designer, or at least the designer of the whole thing, and the guy who basically chose that 4 would be yellow and 5 would be red. 3, I guess, was kind of a coincidence, because like, blue, and you know, they kind of just chose that, and then they were like 4 was as a response to 3, and then 5 is, you know, that sort of thing. And I thought it was interesting. So it's already really well researched. I think the clips are really well used, and I did appreciate the time spent on giving not just the main character, like not just the character, like choosing one character for like the forefront in the screen here, but giving all of their alternate costumes. I think that was really smart. It makes sense too, and I imagine that takes a lot of like collection and then making sure you're thorough with these sorts of things, because he is trying to make something really thorough here, you know. And yeah, major props to him. This is incredible. This is just the start of it. It's also really interesting that this is the first video of this. He said that it was he told me that it was a response, kind of like a follow through to his last video about that was just kind of a quick one debunking a MatPat theory video, and it just kind of led into this one. But I think it was an interesting, because it's a surprising kind of, it's like, I don't know, it's not what you would expect. It's not like a kind of a big boring preamble of what Persona 4 is. He just kind of goes right into it. I think it was a really good an interesting note to start out on. And I'm looking forward to more. You know, one thing I was curious about, if you can answer this, do you know why? Of course you know. I mean, you have that he's thought all this out. I'm surprised that the main character didn't get any color theory. Like, surely gray has a theory all to itself, right? Of color and things. I imagine like it's probably just like, oh, it means as a blank slate. Like, yeah, you get maybe. But I was surprised, yeah, that the main character doesn't get any of that either. But the rest of the characters, it seemed pretty thorough otherwise. I just thought that was interesting, because that was like that's one of the only characters that I know and recognize from Persona 4. So that was like a notable omission for me, but that's okay. Maybe you have of course you have a particular reason for that. I really enjoyed the video. It was a good time. Stop Discord. Yeah, it was a good time. Wow, SteveSekai with the big 30-minute video. This VTuber lore broke me. Also, congrats on getting one of these VTubers in particular to notice you. That was cool, hearing about that. But yeah, I went through this whole video, and you know, it's very consistent. Like, it's just kind of Steve on camera and stuff, so it's not the most visually engaging thing to watch, to me at least, but that's okay. I think Steve does have a good camera presence and stuff, but he's not like constantly, I guess he is cracking jokes, but it's not the same kind of, like, I don't know, the humor isn't, we're not aligned in the same way. But I think I do appreciate the categorization and going group by group of these VTubers and talking about their very insane, wacky kind of lore to them. And I also appreciated that Steve didn't just kind of recount it, right? Like, I think it could have been very easy, and some of these other channels have probably done this, where they just tell you the lore, but Steve actually kind of gives you his take on it, and he's trying to make sense of all of it. Or he's like, wait, so if this means this, and then and he's really trying to give it the proper attention and trying to follow it through, and not just like, look at this wacky shit, right? That was my perspective. Personally, I was listening to some of these stories, this lore, and I'm like, okay, because it's at the end of the day, they're just kind of chatting with they're talking with their chat and playing video games and things. And how often does that lore come up? To be honest, I didn't actually know they had lore. I mean, great. I didn't know too many about Niji-Sanji VTubers in particular. I've recognized one of them, two of them. I recognized like the penguin one and the dragon purple hair girl. And that's about it. The rest of them I didn't really know much about. I kind of know more about the OG ones, I guess, or like the big the Hololive ones, basically. But I did not know these guys had lore. I was, you know what? But it didn't fully surprise me either. You know, I didn't recognize it, although it does make sense, because I know JoJo Talks Too Much is getting huge into the VTuber space and having his own VTuber, and his VTuber has lore, because he's like a zombie mansion guy, I think. I'm sorry, I hope that's not insulting. It's interesting. But like, I knew I guess they had some things to them, but I always thought it was like, oh, they're just themed a certain way. But then having a whole lore and some of these tragic backstories and stuff, I was like, oh my gosh. But I really appreciate that Steve really takes it seriously, despite, kind of riffing on it here and there, and like, that's bizarre, like, what the but really meeting it where it is, basically. And yeah, I thought he did a pretty good job with this. Yeah, it held my attention the whole time. It was what a heck of a compliment, Shaves. Like, oh, thanks. I'm sorry. No, I enjoyed it. It was interesting. It was a good time. Yeah, good job. I did watch this Mother's Basement video, and It was funny. I observed this about myself. I know it's a good Mother's Basement video when I instinctively want to click on it. When I immediately am just like like with if you use a mouse, if you can like click on the wheel on it to link on something, it automatically makes a new tab. Like I instinctively do that when I immediately want to watch a video or something. And I did it for this one. I was like, yeah, let's go. And then I was like, wait, I have to hold off for tomorrow when I'm watching it for digest and stuff. So that's a good sign. Anyway, yeah, so he's going over and talking about the Crunchyroll original anime. So like the stuff that they sponsor, basically, that they're either their co-productions or the stuff that they entirely support the animation team themselves, or there's partnerships with Adult Swim and things like that. So Jeff's very thorough about this and covers pretty much all of them. Very brief, not like super in depth or anything, but it functions a lot like a lot of his recent videos, which are just sort of like a parade of different anime and stuff. Like, oh, let me talk about this one a little bit, and like he gives like a 3-episode test sort of thing and talks about them here and there, and gives them a rating at the end as well. But usually the functioning of that rating was to make the argument of like, how is the success of this in terms of his subjective quality of like, oh, hey, what he thinks of these, of course. But he's giving them all out of 10 and then averaging them into an average. Averaging them to like get an idea of how well this does. And sorry to spoil the video a bit. It's okay. It's not a big deal. It's still an interesting video. The average is not good. The average is like a 4.4 out of 10. It's not great. But I did appreciate that he went through pretty much all of them. And there was a couple that I never heard of before. Like, I had heard of High Guardian Spice and Onyx Equinox, but I hadn't heard of this, what was it? Hack something? It's like this it's like based on a British comic, I think. But apparently the creator is like super jackass, like distance yourself sort of thing. And that's why nobody had heard of this thing, and they're quietly sneaking it onto their service without any fanfare because the guy's super problematic, I guess. But it's awful apparently, so it's like, oh well, too bad. Whatever. But yeah, Jeff, I appreciated what Jeff was talking about with High Guardian Spice, where he's like, guys, there are way worse anime than this. Like I think he actually, if anything, it's actually more insulting to High Guardian Spice, because he's like, this is mid, and it's like, it's gonna stay on 3 episodes dropped, and I will never watch the rest of it again. Compared to like Gibiate or X-Arm or some of these other things, where he's like, oh, compared to these trash fires, which are awful, and I enjoy watching all of them because I want to see how bad they can get and taking them down a peg. And obviously I'm not a fan of that. This, personally, but if he has his fun, who am I to ruin his fun, right? But yeah, so like there's some show he would watch all of these shows, but like High Guardian Spice, it's like, oh no, it's mid, I'm dropping it. So if anything, it's kind of more insulting almost. At least I think so. Yeah, but it was interesting going through all of them. It's like, oh yeah, that's one of them too, and I didn't think of that one here and there. They're still co-producing a lot more than I think Jeff gives credit for. Like he gives it to like Tonikawa, but like I think it was because they have a more prominent claim in the production pipeline or something. But I don't know why he didn't talk about what was that one. Like Odd Taxi's like a co-production sort of, but they don't label it as an original the same way. And there was another one that they did. I forget what it was. I think like if one of the features on Verve, and maybe I can just access this only through my phone, like the mobile app or something. But like I'm pretty sure on Verve, I have to log into Verve too. So I haven't done my desktop version in a while. I could have sworn on Verve there's a feature where you can be like, we made these, and there's a category of all these anime that they helped fund, basically. But there was one I remember that they promoted a lot at the time, but it's sort of like the slice of life girls thing. I don't remember that being in this video, but it's okay. Still, I think it was a good exercise, and interesting to go through all of them and kind of give a postmortem, because it does seem like they're winding down this and not really moving forward with this idea anymore so much, because they kind of, yeah, oh well. But yeah, I appreciated him kind of being more thorough and looking into that a little more deeply. That was cool. okay. And what I thought were the best videos of the week. The ones that I thought were like, yeah, okay. And this was from account Suin. Toka, I'm sorry if they don't want me to address them as Suin, like I apologize. But like I know them as Suin because they were, I don't know, just knowing about that in general. But this is a manga animation thing for Tokyo Ghoul Re, Toka confessing to Kaneki, and it's very short scene, but it feels a little longer because she uses a lot more space in like the dialogue and some awkwardness and stuff, and kind of giving the scene a more proper pace, the breathing room it deserves. Because I guess because she's using the anime's audio from a particular episode and she's like artificially kind of cutting it out and isolating it so that it's more deliberately paced, I guess, and has more of a gravitas to each moment, and like each, it has the slowness it deserves, I suppose, at least subjectively. Because the thing is, right, with manga, time is sort of hard to, it's not the easiest thing to gauge, because a reader, they can spend all they want on a little panel, or they can just, oh, there's no dialogue, then they skim it, and maybe they're like, oh, that felt rushed because they rushed it because they read it. Whereas in anime, somebody else dictates that time, and they either spend a whole lot of time on this scene or they don't. And so you can, I don't know, that's my personal thing with manga. I like manga a lot, but it's kind of one of the reasons I don't as much talk about it, or at least read as much, I suppose. But this is really nice, and the manga animations here are really well done too. I think there's a certain scene where Suin does that thing with like having kind of a layer, like a gray layer over the anime footage, and looks like it's kind of trapped in the manga panel. I think that was kind of nice. But the animations themselves are really impressive. Each one feels very deliberate and concise, which makes sense, because if you're doing this independently and sort of deal, it's like you don't want to just do this kind of haphazardly. And it's a nice scene. It is a bit spoilery. It's kind of a pivotal story moment, it seems, but I've not seen any Tokyo Ghoul, so it's like, yeah, that's okay. At least for me, at least. Yeah, Suin's really great at what she does here, and I highly recommend checking her stuff out. She's done other stuff, some other animations with Chihaya Furu and things, but this was really great. I really, really, really liked it. It's great. Broken record. Clear and Sweet has finally finished the Ultimate Magical Girl tier list, and this is the final boss is a discussion with two individuals that are working on PhDs, and they've wrote entire theses about magical girls, or sort of like have been leading some classes, like academic classes about magical girls. And so they're very if you're gonna find any authority about this, at least in English, it's definitely these guys. And yeah, so they talked very broadly about magical girls in general. They kind of hop all over the place. They're mostly eyeballing the tier list and saying like, why is that up there? Why is that down there? Why is, and then kind of like finagling things a little bit. They talk shit about Full Moon. Thank you everybody who shouted that out, and it kind of made it. At first it was like at the top must watch, and then one of them was like, I didn't like it, and they bumped it down one. I'm like, okay, that's fine. We'll take the A tier then. Fine. And the Doremi discussion was contentious. Then it wasn't contentious for them, but it was contentious for me, like listening to it, because I'm like, because it's like, why harp on the POW stuff of all things for fucking Dokkan? Why harp on that? Like, you're not giving that anything for these other shows. It seemed that way to me, at least, where it's like this one aspect, and it's not even that big of an aspect in the show, and it also like it doesn't at all counteract the, like, it's not just the Hosoda episodes with Doremi Dokkan. It's not just those 2 episodes. It's that entire last 5 episodes where the ending of the entire series. And I did like one of the guys, I forget their names. One of the guys pointed out that it's kind of weird, a little tricky, where a lot of these series are broken up into individual seasons, and then they're all over the place, and they're trying to gauge because Sharp is super low and everything. And I get it. Sharp is kind of a weak season for some people. It is my least favorite. Out of what? Like, out of an amazing, like it's a 8 compared to 9s and 10s. Like, oh, but it ranks so like far. It's like, it looks like a 6 or a 5. least in the grand, if you're looking, not to say that's not necessarily, but it kind of is when the tier list isn't just talking about the importance of magical girls and factoring in their historical relevance, but also factoring in their perceived quality, right? Their perceived quality. So it's like you're seeing this, and it's like, okay, S tier, I guess those are all 10 out of 10s, right? And you could say, no, actually that's not the case. And also, by that logic, all the people at the bottom with like Project Echo and Utena and Penguin Drum and Little Witch Academia, Flip Flappers I think makes it into the actual tier list, but there's a lot of the ones on the bottom where it's contentious whether they are magical girls or not. There's some gray area there, and although never mind. I'm not gonna say it. Well, they do talk about it, so I can't say it. There is a bit of a mention where it's like, is one like the contention of whether Wonder Egg Priority is a magical girl or not. I've not seen the show, so I'm going to assume yes, because they have magical powers, so why not? It kind of seems to function that way. That's also very high up, considering some people their opinions about it, but also Flip Flappers is high up, and it kind of has the same problem, at least in my opinion. At least from what I was hearing about Wonder Egg Priority and having seen Flip Flappers, I'm like, that sounds right. That checks out. Oof. No, but this still high up. Okay. No, but it's that, like, by that logic of like, oh, these are the 10s and everyone at the bottom is not 10s. Like, no, of course Utena is like a super relevant and important series and stuff, and also like probably a 10 for people. Not for me, but it's okay. It's okay. And then I did mention on Twitter, like, talking with Clear and Sweet about like the fact that Rosa Versailles is on there, and it's like, okay. Right. I get it's a personal choice. Like, okay, that's fair. It's sort of finding the use of this, and I really like the insight on this and describing some of these. I liked the thought of like just putting all of Precure on its own tier list, or like its own ranking, because it's like it's just Precure, right? That's a good take. I actually was like, that's not a bad take. That's kind of interesting. Or maybe it's just own tier list sort of thing. But yeah, the idea of like splitting the seasons up versus like, because especially with Doremi, and I guess Sailor Moon is the case as well, the multiple seasons isn't just like, there's more of it, even though literally Moto Ojamajo Doremi is literally translated to more Ojamajo Doremi. It just seems like, it's more. But like, it's really important that you have all of it, that you watch all of Doremi. And it's not just like, oh, that's cute, like that's a little extra thing. Like even the movies, even the 2 movies from like Sharp and Moto, they factor into the series overall. They actually get referenced later on. Like it's a very narrative driven show, all things considered. Despite it having a lot of episodic stuff, it's actually very narrative driven. Anyway, but I still really like the conversation, and it's really high level and very all encompassing and high tier. So even though it's just over visuals of a tier list, and sometimes Clear as we cuts to some other meme or some other thing that's kind of nice. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed the conversation. It was wonderful. I definitely encourage you guys to check this out. The whole series is interesting, but I do really like this last one in particular. It's sort of a holistic talking about magical girls and stuff. I treated it as kind of a podcast too. I thought it was nice. Yeah, it was a good time. Anime Back When. I really liked the Slayers video, the most important video. And it seems very thorough, and I have to say, like, I got the vibes of like, you're just getting better and better at this, man. And it's really exciting to see. I think that just the practice is coming through. You're writing more and you're editing more and you're learning and like just getting better and better at it. And that progress is super cool to see personally. I appreciated the thoroughness of this series of this video, where you really covered all the entries, but not in like excruciating detail or thorough, like the definitive anything, even though it's called the most important video. You're not trying to make the definitive Slayers video in a way. But you do kind of give your take about each one. I really appreciated that you did not dwell on the ones that were shit. You just didn't spend any time really complaining about them. They're like dog shit. I really liked, because it just seemed like really abrupt, and And that's all you really say about them too. It's like, this movie, dog shit, and this movie. They just moved on. I was actually really, really refreshed by that, and I didn't have time or reason to get upset or kind of disgruntled about it, as I probably would have if you went into any more detail than that. Because it just seemed like you're really trying to recommend this as a whole franchise, and like giving a full perspective about it that's, you know, additive and encouraging and interesting, but like still honest. I did appreciate, like, I understand, like, you know, so the thing about me with talking about negative content, I think, just to further explore my own thoughts about it, I don't have like a written document somewhere of like, here's my stance, here's what I rate a 6, you know. Sorry to those, no offense to those of you who do, but I think my perspective with like talking about negative stuff, I totally lost my place. So I appreciated that you were honest about some of these titles, because it is important to clarify that, because it does influence it in some way. But like, my thing with negative stuff, I guess, is like, is it constructive? Is it important that you talk about these things? Because, I mean, to me, I imagine one of the reasons why I love the Utena movie so much is because of its contrast with the show, of how I had problems with it, and the movie relinquished, like, kind of like alleviates those problems, and it makes it better in my eyes. If I liked the show just fine, I don't know how much more I would like the movie. Maybe I wouldn't like it as much as I do right now. You know, so I think it's important to be honest about these things, and so I'm not saying I'm not making a rule of like, if you talk negatively about this show, I'm not gonna like your video. Like, that's not the case. I will say though, but it is a kind of a likelihood that you're gonna have to give me a reason why I should trust you or listen to you, right? Because I think it's because of Bennett specifically, where I would hear about these OVAs, he would be the only one talking about them, and he would shit all over them, and I'd believe him. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds right, because he's showing these certain clips, and it sounds believable if I've never heard or seen of this thing before. And then I get this other opinion of like, no, he's talking out his ass. Like, this is really good for this and this and this reason. I feel betrayed, and I'm like, I don't know what to think, right? If the person who, to my mind, if the person is like talking encouragingly and positively and recommending this show, they're not trying to like lie to you or manipulate you. You know what I mean? I have a better time believing the people who like this thing because they want you to watch it, rather than somebody who doesn't like this thing and is saying this so that you don't watch it, right? And I don't like that feeling of somebody. He's like, what do you mean I don't get to watch? He's not, obviously he can't, nobody can stop you from watching all of this stuff. And I say that in my Lupin video, where it's like, I can't stop you from watching all of Lupin. And I'm like, maybe you don't have to, sort of thing. And it's like, and so in that instance, it was sort of like, I understand my limitations of that, but I'm giving my reasons and kind of the lessons of that, where it's like, I don't have to watch every Gundam entry. I don't have to watch every Kitaro thing, sort of, and rationalizing that with myself, because I have that desire to watch everything, watch every anime ever type of thing. So I think it's a relatable feeling for a lot of hardcore fans like myself. Anyway, that was the justification of that. I'm sorry that's not about your video here, but you know, I did really enjoy it though. I did like the approach to that, and just kind of like dog shit moved on. And the descriptions of these, it was curious that like you used the dub despite talking about the voice actress Megumi who I forgot her last name, Hayashibara, something like that. I'm so bad. She's really like one of the more famous, prevalent, important seiyus, and this is one of her more defining roles. So I was surprised that you didn't use her voice performances for this video instead of the dub. Maybe you didn't want to deal with subtitles, or maybe that's how you experienced it and that's how you'd want to frame it for people. Like, that could be fine. But I was surprised, and I was like, oh, that's an interesting choice. But yeah, no, otherwise, yeah, I really liked this video a ton, like really a lot. It was a good time, and I do think you're getting better with the writing and the editing and stuff. It was a consistently good time. Yeah, great vid. Okay, and the last video I wanted to talk about is this guy, Internet Pitstop, IP. anime is mainstream now, and that's okay. For one thing, I am 1,000% on board with everything this guy says, and his general philosophy says like this is a good thing. The moment where he's pointing out Megan Thee Stallion talking about anime and how much she loves watching it, he's like, I don't care what you think, this is a good thing. This is really good. Like, this is fantastic. I was like, a fucking men. Yes, it is. Because they're normalizing it. And he is talking about that overcoming of, like, you're the weird kid. And now there's all these popular kids are getting into it sort of thing. And he's kind of talking more of the internet side and taking down some posts and citing a lot of different internet. He's very internet laden, where he's on Twitter a lot, giving a lot of Twitter screen caps and things. Also a lot of TikToks. He's posting a lot of TikToks. Some of that cringe stuff that he posted with then some of them are the weird anime fans. And I was like, oh God. And yeah, it's a lot of us. It's interesting because this sort of narrative and the overcoming of it, of the stigma and everything, is actually something I'm working on in an official capacity right now, which I don't want to talk about too much. But it's really exciting, and it's this sort of thing I really like. And I gotta say, it's the best one, and the one I'm talking about last right now, because I loved his presentation, his delivery as a performer in this video. It's very Nakey Jakey, of course, because it's the green screen stuff, but he is being inventive with it. It's not just sort of like, oh, it reminds me of him. He really is taking it in that level where he's shrinking himself and cutting himself out with the head and dunking himself in the toilet and like muffling the sound. Like, it's very creative, and it's a really active, fun video. And he's so funny. I really liked a lot of the jokes and laughing out loud to some of these. What was the setup for this? Where he's like, we're weird. The more you know. Or I forget what it was. It's like, hey, stop it. Or something like that. I don't remember what it was. I have to look it up. I have to find it. It was so fucking funny. But like, I really liked his vibe. I really liked the stuff he was talking about. Again, he's really reacting to a lot of like internet related things, but like, and really kind of talking about some other like elitist people and the experience, and all of it felt so fucking relatable to me as a fan, which is kind of rare, honestly. Even as someone who like, he doesn't seem like someone who knows his shit in the same way, who's seen a whole lot of things, but he's into it. Like, you could very tell he's not like a surface level kind of like, I'm dipping my toe into this anime thing or something. Like, he's really into it. And I love the humor in this again, like really putting himself out there and kind of like looking kind of ridiculous in some points, like the fucking running a Sonic shit like that. Like, I love that shit. Yeah, it's like, what was he talking about? Gatekeeping. He was talking about gatekeeping. He's like, hey champ, it ain't that serious. You'll get over it. The more you know. I died, dude. I fucking lost it. I love this guy's channel. I've not seen any of it. I feel like I probably would have. But he's only made a couple. He only started a couple months ago. But yeah, I fucking love his vibe. It was sick. I really liked it. This is definitely my favorite video of his. Definitely check it out. Please, if you like his stuff, subscribe and stuff, and just get him in here. Get us involved with this, and know more about this guy. IP's cool. He's a cool guy. Man, I love this video. I would watch it again, actually. I probably will. Excellent. Yep. Think that'll do it for this installment of AniTube Digest. Just about an hour, at least of raw recording. It's fine. You guys are great. You guys have a great week. Yo, peace.